report is different from the payables report where we actually print checks and stuff.
Good morning, everyone. Just going to give it another minute or so while people trickle in. Okay. Looks like we have most of the people who registered online, so I'm going to go ahead and get started. Welcome to the third and final webinar for the federal fiscal year 2026 to 2029 group TAM Plan update. This webinar is being recorded, and a link to the recording and slides will be sent out in a follow-up email in the coming days. We'll have time for questions at the end, but feel free to add any questions to the chat throughout the presentation. Here's a look at today's agenda. Much of the content will be a refresh, but the purpose of today's webinar is just to formally wrap up the plan update and provide guidance on the next steps, along with an overview of roles and responsibilities for plan participants over the next 4 years of this TAM cycle. Okay. Starting with a little background on the federal side, TAM was established under the Moving Ahead for Progress in the 21st Century Act, otherwise known as MAP 21. This required FTA to create a system to monitor and manage public transportation assets with the goal to improve safety, reliability, and performance. The final TAM rule was issued in 2016, and it's what established this TAM plan requirement for all service providers who receive federal funding. Ultimately, the goal of TAM is to help agencies maintain a state of good repair with their capital assets and prioritize funding based on asset conditions. These plans must be updated every 4 years, and Tier 2 agencies are required to include these 4 elements: an inventory of assets, a condition assessment of those assets, evidence of decision support tools, and develop a list of investment prioritization. And so with that background, let's get into the new plan and go over some of the major sections within it. 34 eligible Tier 2 agencies opted into the group plan, which will be in effect through federal fiscal year 2029, so September 30th of 2029. The purpose of the group plan is to aid DRPT and participating agencies in achieving and maintaining a state of good repair for public transportation assets operated within the Commonwealth. The final plan, along with additional TAM resources, are available on the Transit Asset Management page on DRPT's website, also linked there. Okay. DRPT already has several processes that work in tandem with the 4 TAM planning requirements, and this matrix illustrates how DRPT's existing processes meet each required element. And so the first 2 required elements, an asset inventory and condition assessment of those assets. During the development of this plan, DRPT utilized the TransAm platform to store and track asset inventory and condition assessments for vehicles, equipment, and facilities. And so all of the data used for this TAM plan update and associated analysis was pulled from TransAm. As you all know, we've since moved away from TransAm and will now be tracking assets directly in web grants, and that's effective September 1st. Just a quick plug on this, we're hosting an asset inventory training this coming Friday at 2 p.m. I think most of you should have received the Gov Delivery email blast about this, but if you aren't registered yet, I think Wood's going to drop the registration link in the chat, so highly recommend tuning in for that. The third required element is a decision support tool. And so DRPT already kind of does this through mid and long range planning efforts, including the TDP, TSP requirements, 5-year capital budgets, and the merit scoring process, which prioritizes state of good repair projects. These processes that we already have in place help determine which assets have the greatest need for replacement and state of good repair funding. And then the fourth required element, which is developing a prioritized list of investments. This is something that the merit program kind of fulfills in tandem through its annual scoring and prioritization process, which culminates in a program of projects that is released in our annual 6-year improvement plan. I'll have a little bit more detail on these 4 required elements throughout, but this is just an initial overview. And so for the TAM performance measures, under this final rule from 2016, FTA established performance measures that are used to approximate the state of good repair for capital assets in 4 categories: rolling stock, equipment, facilities, and infrastructure. For the purposes of our Tier 2 group plan, we only need to focus on 3 of these. That's rolling stock, equipment, and facilities. State of good repair performance for rolling stock, this includes revenue vehicles and support vehicles, is based on age as defined by FTA's useful life benchmark, ULB. And then new this year, we also included high value equipment in the plan. That's defined as equipment that costs over $50,000 to purchase and is something that would be moved if the agency were to move facilities. But due to the diverse nature of these high value assets, we do not set performance targets for equipment assets. And then performance for facilities is based on FTA's transit economics requirement model, so the TERM scale. And of course, lower performance measure values equals just a better state of good repair for the TAM plan participants. Again, this slide has been in all of these TAM webinars, but a reminder that for TAM planning and target setting purposes, asset condition is evaluated based on ULB and not the estimated service life. That is a key difference between TAM and DRPT's merit process. ULB is defined by FTA as the expected life cycle or acceptable period of use in service for a capital asset. So in other words, it's the number of years before which a vehicle should be replaced and off the road, whereas ESL is the minimum age and or mileage at which an asset becomes eligible for replacement under the Merit SGR program. So ideally, vehicles are replaced after they've reached their ESL, but before reaching their ULB. I really like this table on the side. I think it does a good job at kind of capturing just the relationship between ESL and ULB. And again, for TAM, performance targets for vehicles are based on the ULB, which is FTA's definition. Facilities are assessed using the transit economics requirement model, the TERM rating scale as defined in FTA's facility performance measures guidebook, and it outlines just a standard framework for facility conditions. So the TERM scale is from 1 to 5, 1 being in poor condition in need of immediate repair, all the way up to 5, which is new or near new condition. There might be some warranties on some of the components of the building. That is how facilities targets are set. And so of the entire TAM plan inventory, 13% of the assets have met or exceeded their ULB. And so the entire asset inventory includes 1,281 revenue vehicles, of which 12% have met or exceeded their ULB. I just noticed a mistake. This should be 192 support vehicles, of which 20% have met or exceeded their ULB. And there are 51 facilities, including 7 passenger facilities, and none of the facilities within the plan are below 3.0 on the TERM rating scale, which is great. Okay, this slide's a little crazy, but as of February 1st of this year, we had a total of, again, 1,281 vehicles revenue vehicles included in the TAM plan. Buses and cutaways make up the majority of the fleet, accounting for over 85% of all revenue vehicles in Virginia. There are 51 facilities included and assessed within the 4-year TAM cycle. And then for equipment, this is separated into support vehicles and, again, that high value equipment. There are 192 support vehicles, the majority of which are cars, pickup trucks, and SUVs, and 24 pieces of high value equipment. These are things like mobile column lifts, bus wash components, and then BEB infrastructure. So this is just a summary of the assets that are included within the TAM plan and the condition of those assets. And this is what was used for setting the performance targets. And so getting into the performance targets and the measures, I didn't receive much feedback on the proposed targets that were presented in the draft targets workshop that we held in March. So none of the following targets have changed since then. For vehicles, we are updating the targets in 2 classes. This is over-the-road buses. We're going to be a little bit more aggressive and update that target from 15% to 10% of buses being beyond their ULB. And then vans, we're using the same strategy, lowering it from 20% down to 15%. This was kind of decided since we've been consistently under the target for coach buses. Adjusting the target to 10% seems like it's an achievable goal. And then vans are another category where we've seen reductions in the number of vehicles that are beyond their ULB. And so another area where we think this is an achievable target. And then for support vehicles, we've made the determination to reduce the target for both automobiles and trucks and other rubber tire vehicles. We're increasing it to 35%. In the 2022 to 2025 plan, the target for both of these asset classes was 30%. The rationale behind this change is to prioritize SGR for revenue vehicles and direct funding and other resources to keeping revenue vehicle assets in a state of good repair. For facilities, the goal set forth in the 2022 to 2025 plan was to have less than 10% of passenger and parking facilities under 3.0 term rating, and less than 15% of admin and maintenance facilities fall under that term rating. These figures come from a combination of the detailed condition assessment ratings over the past 4 years. And as of the latest round of assessments that was completed in the fall of 2025, there aren't any facilities in the plan that were rated under 3.0. And so since we've been consistently meeting the targets that were set forth in the 2022 plan, we've decided to reduce the target to 5% for passenger and parking facilities, so that's down from 10, and 10% for admin and maintenance facilities, down from 15. The goal for adjusting these is to just encourage projects that keep all facilities in a state of good repair, but prioritizing the passenger facilities. And so the third required element in the plan is evidence of a decision support tool. And so the plan details the various decision support tools and procedures that DRPT already has in place. And so again, we keep an asset inventory database, previously TransAm, now WebGrants asset inventory. And this is what we use when setting targets and just monitoring how we're doing with that. We also have our transit development plan, transit strategic plan requirement. This is a planning document that identifies projected fiscal needs, tracks SGR conditions, and sets additional performance measures that can be used for kind of deciding which vehicles have the highest need for SGR replacement. We also have 5-year capital budget requirement. Again, this is a more immediate view of the fiscal needs for agencies for SGR and expansion, and provides a higher level of detail than the TDP, TSP process. And then we have the useful life ESL standards. And so this is what we use to evaluate state capital funding through the merit scoring and prioritization process. And then prioritization is the fourth and final required element that is in Tier 2 TAM plans. Investment prioritization occurs primarily at the transit agency level through, again, several DRPT mandated processes. In Virginia, these processes are driven by two main requirements. Again, that's the TSP or TDP requirement, and then the state capital funding prioritization through merit. While taking a look at the asset inventory and condition analysis, 99 revenue vehicles were identified as being over their ULB. 56 of those vehicles were buses and 43% are cutaways. And so the prioritization tiers that we created really aim at replacing the oldest vehicles first. They are the highest priority. So we have three tiers. Tier 1, which is the highest priority, this is any vehicle that is over 6 years beyond the ULB, or facilities that have a term rating of 1 or below. Tier 2, which is kind of the intermediate priority need, this is vehicles that are anywhere between 3 and 6 years beyond their ULB, and facilities that have a term rating of 2. And then Tier 3, vehicles that are 1 to 2 years beyond ULB, and then any facilities that are under 3 on the term rating scale. And in the plan appendix, we have a prioritization list that shows the number of vehicles within each of these tiers by agency. And so that is another kind of guide that can be used for deciding which assets have the highest need for replacement. Okay, these slides were in the kickoff webinar back in December, but I included them here because I think they're a good reference for the roles and responsibilities of both DRPT and plan participants throughout the 4-year plan cycle. And also I wanted to keep this in so there aren't any surprises in the coming years when DRPT reaches out to fulfill these requirements. And so there are 4 ongoing TAM tasks. Plan participants are the responsible party for the asset inventory updates and the facility condition assessments. And then DRPT is responsible for annual target setting and NTD reporting. And the first ongoing task that plan participants are responsible for is the asset inventory. Again, Web Grants Asset Inventory is our single source of truth for all asset condition data. We have a biannual vehicle update requirement, January 15th and July 15th. The July 15th deadline was postponed to September 30th for this year only, just as we get the Web Grants module off the ground, and kind of allow time for you all to get in there and see how things work. And so this is completing these biannual updates for capital assets, including revenue vehicles, equipment, and facilities. Again, TAM planning is a data-driven process, and so having accurate information on vehicles, equipment, and facilities is essential for this. The second ongoing task is the TAM facilities assessment. TAM plan participants will receive a detailed assessment for each qualifying facility once throughout the 4-year cycle. These assessments focus on the state of several different components, so that can be the substructure of a building, shell, the interiors, plumbing, HVAC, electrical, really anything that makes up the facility is included in these detailed assessments. And so DRPT facilitates these, but the plan participant is responsible for kind of coordinating with the contractor and providing any information that they need. And so once assessments are completed, the term ratings from those assessments are to be reported in web grants and NTD. TAM target analysis. This is an ongoing task that DRPT is responsible for as the TAM plan sponsor. Each year, DRPT will reassess the targets that were set forth in this TAM plan and decide whether we need to update the targets or leave them as is. This is done using asset data from web grants. And once we've make a determination on whether or not we are going to update the targets, we will update the interactive TAM performance target dashboard, which is available on the TAM webpage of DRPT and our open data portal. And we will send out a memo that notifies plan participants of the decision and will request sign off from the accountable executives using a letter template. And so this is done in early fall, and DRPT manages the coordination, but we just will need kind of acknowledgement from plan participants each fall after we do this. And then the fourth ongoing task is NTD reporting. And so as the plan sponsor, DRPT is responsible for reporting the following TAM metrics to NTD each year. And so this is, again, the projected targets for the next fiscal year. That's what's done in the fall. A condition assessment rating for facilities, and then a narrative report on any changes in transit system conditions and the progress towards achieving previous performance targets. As group plan participants, you do not need to report anything regarding TAM to NTD specifically, but agencies are still responsible for reporting asset information, either directly as a full reporter or to DRPT as a reduced reporter. So this slide kind of summarizes these roles and responsibilities that I just spoke about. I wanted to keep this in just as a reference. Again, both DRPT and plan participants are responsible for different elements to kind of fulfill FTA's requirements of TAM planning. And so in terms of immediate next steps and action items, we are about 95% of the way done with this TAM plan update. And really the only thing that's left for agencies to do is the agency accountable executive sign off on this final plan. As with the opt-in letter, I'm going to be sending out a follow-up email that will have a template to use for this accountable executive sign off. We are requesting that it comes back to DRPT by September 25th, so the plan can be fully adopted by September 30th, right before the end of the federal fiscal year. On our side, DRPT will be coordinating with MPOs on the adoption of the new targets. MPOs will have 180 days from September 30th, when the plan is adopted, to incorporate targets into their TIP and LRTPs. And then DRPT will also report the new performance targets to NTD in January. No action is needed from reduced reporters, but direct reporters should verify that they've formally opted in to the Virginia group plan in NTD. And then just one last thing before we break for questions. I'd really like to thank you all for your participation and partnership throughout this plan update process. I realize TAM is not the most exciting thing in the world, but I really appreciate everyone being responsive and on top of things. It really just made things easier for us on our end. Happy to take any questions now, but as always, if you think of anything after this webinar, please feel free to reach out to myself or Wood, and we're happy to answer any TAM questions. So that concludes this final wrap-up webinar. Check the chat here. Okay, no questions in the chat. Are there any questions online here about this? Okay, I'm taking it that I explained everything very well and they're very crystal clear. Again, a follow-up email will be coming out either today or tomorrow or Thursday, and that will have Again, the next steps that I went over, but it will also include a letter template to be used for the accountable executive sign-off that again, we're requesting to have back a month from today, September 25th. Okay, well, thank you all. As always, here for questions, but I think this concludes this.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks, everyone.